The village of Arochie sat in a quiet valley, surrounded by dense forests that whispered with secrets. It was a place where life moved at a slow, steady pace, and where everyone knew each other's business. But the arrival of Adaobi changed everything. Adaobi was unlike any woman the villagers had ever seen. Her beauty was captivating, her skin the color of polished ebony, her eyes deep and knowing, and her voice soft as a lullaby. She moved into a small hut at the edge of the village, a place long abandoned after the death of its previous owner. Rumors trailed her like a shadow, for she was a widow, and her husband's death was shrouded in mystery. Some said he had died of an illness, others whispered of something far darker. At first, the villagers welcomed her warmly. They were drawn to her grace and kindness, and many of the men found themselves smitten. But there was something unsettling about Adaobi. She lived alone, yet her home was always well stocked with food and her clothes immaculate. It was as if she wanted for nothing, though no one ever saw her working or trading in the market. As days turned into weeks, Adaobi's presence began to stir unease. The older women in the village, wise and perceptive, noticed that her beauty seemed unnatural, almost otherworldly. They warned their sons to keep their distance, but their words fell on deaf ears. Men, young and old, found themselves inexplicably drawn to her. Little did they know that Adaobi carried a dark secret, one that would soon unravel the peace of their quiet village. Life in Arochie revolved around routine, morning farm work, trading at the market and evening gatherings around crackling fires. Adaobi, however, was an anomaly in this cycle. She rarely joined the women at the river to fetch water or in the fields to till the land. Instead, she spent her days tending a small garden behind her hut or weaving baskets with intricate patterns that no one else could replicate. Her mysterious air only added to her allure, especially for men like Chike and Kelechi. Chike, a wealthy trader, was known for his smooth tongue and fine clothing. His confidence made him the envy of many in the village. From the moment he laid eyes on Adaobi, he was determined to win her over. "She will be my wife," he declared one evening at the Palm Wine Bar. The other men laughed, but Chike's tone left no room for doubt. Kelechi, on the other hand, was a humble farmer with a kind heart. He admired Adaobi from afar, unable to summon the courage to approach her. While Chike flaunted his wealth and boasted of his plans, Kelechi worked silently, hoping that his sincerity might one day catch her attention. The women of the village were not blind to Adaobi's growing influence over the men. "She is trouble," Emeka, the market elder, warned. "A woman so beautiful and yet so alone, there is something unnatural about her." But her words were dismissed as jealousy. Chike's courtship of Adaobi began with grand gestures. He brought her bolts of colorful fabric from the market and jars of honey harvested from the forest. Adaobi accepted his gifts with a smile that made his heart race, but she never gave him the answer he sought. "Be patient, Chike," she said in her soothing voice. "Perhaps one day." One evening, Chike visited Adaobi's hut, determined to seal their relationship. He was seen walking toward her home as the sun dipped below the horizon, carrying a basket of yams and a bottle of wine. That was the last time anyone saw him. The next morning, Chike's mother, worried when he didn't return, asked around the village. No one knew where he was. His friends, who had grown used to his nightly boasts, found his silence unnerving. By the end of the week, Chike's disappearance became the talk of Arochie. Adaobi was called to the elders' council. Sitting before the stern-faced men, she wept convincingly. "Chike came to my home, but he left shortly after," she explained. "I do not know where he went. Perhaps the forest took him." The forest, a place feared for its dense foliage and hidden dangers, had always been a convenient scapegoat. The elders, though uneasy, accepted her explanation. But among the villagers, suspicion grew. Late one night, under the cover of darkness, Adaobi slipped out of her hut. She moved with purpose, her footsteps light and deliberate. She carried a small calabash filled with offerings, palm oil, kola nuts, and a piece of red cloth. The path she followed led deep into the forbidden forest. Here, the air grew thick, and the trees seemed to close in, their gnarled branches reaching like fingers. Adaobi reached a clearing where an ancient shrine stood, its stones covered in moss and smeared with dried blood. Kneeling before the shrine, she whispered, "Eze Mmuo, I bring what you demand." And the sound of rustling leaves filled the clearing, though there was no wind. A deep voice, neither male nor female, echoed around her. "You have done well, Adaobi. The sacrifices please me. But you must bring more. The wealth and protection I grant you come at a price." Adaobi's heart pounded. She had entered into this pact out of desperation after her husband's death left her destitute. The deity had promised her security, but the cost was steep, human lives. "I will do as you ask," she replied, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her. Kelechi, unaware of the dangers lurking behind Adaobi's beauty, decided to act on his feelings. He approached her one afternoon as she sat weaving a basket. "I have admired you for a long time," he began nervously. "I would like to know you better." Adaobi's smile was warm, but her eyes held a shadow that Kelechi failed to notice. "You are kind, Kelechi," she said. "Come to my home tomorrow evening, and we will talk." The next night, Kelechi went to Adaobi's hut, carrying a gift of freshly harvested corn. When he didn't return, his family was frantic. By morning, the villagers began to fear the worst. Adaobi once again denied any wrongdoing. "He left my home late at night," she said. "Perhaps he lost his way in the forest." But this time, her tears seemed forced, and the villagers began to whisper more loudly. The growing unease in Arochie reached its peak after Kelechi's disappearance. It was no longer possible to ignore the strange pattern of events. The elders called for a meeting in the village square, summoning Adaobi and the families of the missing men. The council was composed of the oldest and wisest men in the village, who prided themselves on their ability to uncover the truth. Adaobi stood before them, her face serene despite the accusatory stares from the crowd. "Widow," the eldest of the council began, "it seems that misfortune follows you. Chike and Kelechi, two able men, have vanished, both last seen near your home. What do you have to say for yourself?" Adaobi's voice was steady, her tears well-timed. "I do not know why these tragedies have occurred. I welcomed these men into my home, yes, but I am a lone woman. Why would I bring harm to those who only sought my companionship?" Her words were convincing, and some in the crowd murmured their support. Yet, others remained skeptical. Neka, the market elder, spoke up, her tone sharp. "It is not natural for one woman to bring such grief wherever she goes. The spirits themselves seem to whisper against you." The council deliberated long into the night but ultimately decided that there was no evidence against Adaobi. She was allowed to return to her home, though unease lingered in the air. Obinna, a skilled hunter known for his sharp instincts, had been watching Adaobi closely. He had no interest in her beauty, for he valued truth above all else. The disappearances of Chike and Kelechi troubled him deeply, and his suspicion of Adaobi grew with each passing day. One evening, as the moon cast its pale light over the village, Obinna saw Adaobi slip into the forest. She moved quickly, her form blending into the shadows. Curious and determined, Obinna followed her at a safe distance, careful not to make a sound. He watched as she entered a clearing and knelt before an ancient shrine. The sight sent a chill down his spine. He had heard stories of the forbidden forest and its deities but had never believed them until now. Obinna hid behind a tree, his heart pounding as he listened to Adaobi speak. Her voice was soft, almost reverent, as she addressed the deity. "Eze Mmuo," she whispered, "I have fulfilled your demands. Grant me your protection, as promised." The hunter's blood ran cold. He had seen enough. Quietly, he slipped away, vowing to uncover the truth and protect the village from whatever darkness Adaobi had unleashed. Obinna couldn't sleep that night. The image of Adaobi at the shrine haunted him. He decided to confide in his closest friend, Emeka, a farmer with a strong sense of justice. "Emeka," Obinna said, his voice low, "I followed Adaobi into the forest. She is not who she seems. She has made a pact with something evil." Emeka listened intently as Obinna recounted what he had seen. At first, he was skeptical. "Are you sure of what you saw? The forest plays tricks on the mind." "I am certain," Obinna replied. "We cannot ignore this. If we do, more men will vanish." The two men devised a plan to gather more evidence before approaching the elders. They knew they needed undeniable proof to confront Adaobi and the deity she served. As Obinna and Emeka began their quiet investigation, Adaobi grew uneasy. Eze Mmuo had warned her that someone in the village was watching her. "You must deal with him," the deity commanded. "If you fail, our pact will be broken, and you will face my wrath." Adaobi tried to identify her pursuer. She noticed Obinna's lingering stares and Emeka's subtle questions. She knew they were growing too close to the truth. One night, she confronted Obinna as he walked through the village. Her voice was calm, but her words carried a chilling edge. "Hunter, you seem troubled. Be careful where your curiosity leads you. Some things are better left unseen." Obinna didn't respond, but her warning only strengthened his resolve. He knew he was on the right path. Another suitor, Ikena, a blacksmith from a neighboring village, arrived in Arochie seeking Adaobi's hand. Unlike the others, Ikena was wary of her charms. "She is beautiful," he admitted, "but there is something in her eyes that unsettles me." When Adaobi invited him to her home, Ikena declined, making an excuse about needing to return to his forge. That night, Ikena fell gravely ill, writhing in pain as his family tried desperately to save him. The village healer, summoned to his bedside, declared it a curse. "This is no ordinary sickness," he said. "Someone has called upon dark forces." Word spread quickly, and suspicion once again fell on Adaobi. The news of Ikena's mysterious illness spread like wildfire across Arochie. The villagers were certain that Adaobi was involved, but fear held them back from taking action. After all, if she was truly tied to supernatural forces, confronting her could bring even greater misfortune. The elders gathered once more to discuss the growing tension. Neka, the market elder, spoke first. "We can no longer ignore the whispers, nor can we dismiss the pattern of events. Adaobi has brought darkness upon our village. But we have no proof," another elder countered. "If we act rashly, we risk angering the spirits. What if this is a test from the gods?" The room fell silent. Fear and uncertainty clouded their judgment. Despite the mounting suspicions, the elders decided to delay any action, choosing instead to observe Adaobi closely. Obinna, frustrated by their hesitation, realized he would need to act independently. The elders' inaction was giving Adaobi more time to continue her sinister deeds. Obinna redoubled his efforts, shadowing Adaobi whenever possible. He kept a safe distance, careful not to alert her to his presence. One moonless night, he saw her leaving her hut again, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. This time, he followed her deeper into the forest than before. She moved swiftly, her steps guided by an unseen force. Obinna crept silently, his bow in hand, ready to defend himself if necessary. When Adaobi reached the shrine, she knelt and unwrapped the bundle. To Obinna's horror, it contained human bones, adorned with beads and smeared with red oil. She placed the bones on the shrine and began to chant in a language he didn't understand. Suddenly, the air grew heavy, and the voice of Eze Mmuo filled the clearing. "You have done well, Adaobi. But the hunter watches. He must be silenced." Adaobi froze, her eyes scanning the darkness. Obinna's heart raced as he realized the deity had sensed his presence. He retreated quickly, determined to warn the village before it was too late. The next morning, Adaobi was restless. Eze Mmuo's warning weighed heavily on her mind. She had never disobeyed the deity before, but the hunter's interference posed a new challenge. Eze Mmuo appeared to her that evening, manifesting as a shadowy figure in her hut. "You are failing me, Adaobi," it growled. "I granted you wealth and safety, but you grow careless. Bring me the hunter, or your life is forfeit." Terrified, Adaobi promised to obey. She began to devise a plan to lure Obinna to his doom, but deep inside, a flicker of regret began to grow. That night, Adaobi considered fleeing the village. She packed a small bag and stepped outside, only to find the forest alive with ominous sounds. The trees seemed to close in around her, their branches swaying as if reaching for her. Eze Mmuo's voice echoed in her mind. "You cannot run from me. Fulfill your duty, or I will drag you into the abyss myself." Shaken, Adaobi returned to her hut. She realized that she was trapped, bound to the deity's will. Any attempt to escape would only hasten her demise. Obinna, now certain of Adaobi's guilt, sought the help of a powerful diviner named Anya. Anya was known for her ability to commune with the spirit world and was feared by even the bravest in the village. When Obinna arrived at her compound, Anya was waiting for him. "You have seen the darkness, haven't you?" she said, her voice low and knowing. Obinna nodded. "Adaobi serves a deity named Eze Mmuo. I need to know how to stop her." Anya closed her eyes and began to chant. The air grew cold as she entered a trance. When she opened her eyes again, they glowed faintly. "Eze Mmuo is a powerful spirit, but it can be defeated. You must destroy its shrine and sever its connection to this world. But beware, the deity will not go quietly." Anya gave Obinna a charm for protection and told him to gather the strongest men in the village. Together, they would confront the evil in the forest. Obinna returned to the village and confided in Emeka and a few other brave men. Though fear gripped them, they agreed to join him. They sought Anya's guidance once more, and she prepared a ritual to protect them from the deity's wrath. The men gathered around a fire as Anya marked their foreheads with white chalk and tied protective charms around their wrists. "Do not let fear cloud your hearts," she warned. "Eze Mmuo feeds on weakness. Stay strong, and you will prevail." As the men prepared to enter the forest, the villagers watched with a mix of awe and trepidation. For the first time, hope began to replace fear. The forest was eerily silent as the group made their way toward the shrine. The air grew heavier with each step, and the shadows seemed to shift unnaturally. When they reached the clearing, Adaobi was already there, her face a mask of despair. "Please," she begged, "leave this place. You don't understand the power you're dealing with." Obinna stepped forward. "We understand enough. Your reign of terror ends tonight." Before Adaobi could respond, the shrine erupted with light, and Eze Mmuo appeared in a monstrous form. The deity's voice boomed, "You dare challenge me?" The battle was fierce. Eze Mmuo summoned creatures from the shadows, but the men fought bravely, their protective charms shielding them from harm. Obinna aimed his arrow at the shrine and released it, shattering the sacred stones. As the shrine crumbled, Eze Mmuo let out a deafening roar before vanishing into the darkness. Adaobi fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted this," she sobbed. "After my husband's death, I was desperate. Eze Mmuo promised me a way to survive." Her confession moved some of the men, but others remained angry. "You sacrificed innocent lives for your own gain," Emeka said. "There is no forgiveness for that." The villagers decided Adaobi's fate would be left to the elders. The men returned to the village with news of their victory. The elders, recognizing the danger posed by the forest, ordered it to be burned. Flames consumed the trees, and with them, the remnants of Eze Mmuo's influence. As the fire raged, Adaobi disappeared. Some believed she fled, while others claimed the flames took her as punishment for her sins. But the scars of the ordeal remained. The villagers forbade anyone from entering the forest, marking it as cursed ground. Obinna became a hero, though he remained humble. "I only did what had to be done," he said. As for Adaobi, her name became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of desperation and the consequences of dealing with dark forces.